where do taxi drivers go when they need to buy a taxi? Well, the Taxi Centre have supplied cars to the trade for over 20 years, and they stock a huge range of motors from the world's leading manufacturers: Skoda, Kia, Toyota, Mercedes, Nissan, Ford, Hyundai, you name it. They've got saloons, MPVs, estates, minibuses, prestige cars, the lot, all under one roof, ready for immediate collection or free delivery anywhere on the mainland UK. With taxi trade exclusive discounts, flexible finance options and no hidden fees. They even throw in registration and 12 months road tax. So if you're a taxi driver who needs a new or used taxi, where would you go? TheTaxiCentre.com. Trade only.
The Go Radio Football Show with the Taxi Centre. Save on your new taxi with exclusive discounts across Skoda, Toyota, Ford, Seat and more.
Let's go. Rangers live, they're on in 45 minutes. But who would have believed the headline this morning on Go Radio News? Joe Maguire told us that Jack Ross has departed at Hibs 10 days before a cup final. Davy Provan, your reaction to it?
I think they've jumped the gun big time here, Paul. I don't know whether it's Ben Kenzel, the chief exec, or Ron Gordon, the owner, who's behind it, but I really think they've panicked here in the face of, a minority of Hibs fans being unhappy. Recent results haven't been good, but cup final last season and a semi-final, third in the league, already into the League Cup final this season, having beaten Rangers. I'm not sure what they want.
Leanne Crichton, there have been so many changes in the last 12 months in management. It's a precarious business.
It absolutely is. It makes you question why you would really get into management at all. There's probably a lot more safer jobs out there that you could get involved in. I really feel for Jack Ross. I think he's a very good manager. I know he's had a tough run of results, but with a cup final only a matter of days away, the amount of unrest that leaves a squad with, I think he was a well-liked character within that group as well, and it'll be interesting to see how Hibs respond and more importantly who they appoint.
We're going to talk about that during the next 2 hours. There's so much on the programme. Celtic at home up against Real Betis, but Davy, your old team, they've talked about it's the dead rubber. Pity for Celtic. When you think back to the opening game, they were 2 up over there.
I know, amazing. Two up, and could have been 3 up. Missed a really good chance to go 3 up in the first half. But that was typical of the defending this season, Paul. And I think that's why tonight is important in some respects. It's another test of that Celtic back four. They got a clean sweep at the weekend at Dundee United. This will be a much bigger test tonight.
But they're getting better. I see you were quoted in the media yesterday. They were saying that Davy Provan, someone was just saying Davy Provan has been critical of the defence, and quite rightly at the time.
Yeah, and I still believe they've got to get centre back in. Julian on their way back. Starfelt, still for me, jury's still out on him. I know Postecoglou flagged it up last week, and I think he's trying to make a defence for him. The reason he's having to do that is I think the supporters are still very much undecided.
Leanne, you've first with the team news. The Rangers up against Lyon. Again, Rangers are through, which is great news to that playoff. What's the Rangers line up tonight?
Yeah, they are through, Paul, which means there's a couple of changes to the squad. There's no Alfredo Morelos at all. In goals, it's McLaughlin, a back four of Barisic. On the left, Bassey, Goldson and Patterson starts. On the right, the midfield three is Lundstrom, Kamara and Hadji. And the front three is Wright, Roof and Kent.
I guess the many fans will wonder for Lyon, is Moussa Dembele playing? The Celtic fans want him to play. They think he can score. The Rangers fans, we'll have a bit of that. What do you reckon?
Well, I'll need to check. The teams must be out, but if he's in there, it certainly will make for an interesting one, and he leads the line tonight. So both sets of fans I'm sure will be delighted to see Dembele.
What a start for the manager. It's a bit, isn't it amazing that it was Hibs who thumped Rangers in the cup semi-final, but the new manager's in the stand. The Hibs manager's gone 2.5 weeks later, but for Rangers it's been a great run for Van Bronckhorst after that game when he then went into the dugout. Yeah,
football's a crazy business, Paul, and it just shows you how quickly things can change. I mean, I don't think you could have said this season that Rangers were poor. They certainly hadn't been performing the way that I think most people expect them to, and we had grown accustomed to with the players that they have in their squad. But the couple of tweaks and changes I think that Van Bronckhorst has made since he's come in to that Rangers job it's been telling on the squad, and it's been really, I think, beneficial to the way that they play and with the quality of player that they've got in their ranks. Defensively was the problem. The amount of games that they went that goal behind and found themselves wanting, that seems to have been nullified for now, and they'll be hoping that can continue tonight. But it's interesting. It just shows you how every manager sees things differently. Even in the same type of formation, there's many different interpretations of it, and that's exactly what you're seeing at Rangers just now, is a different interpretation of that 4-3-3.
Davey, Davey, 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks in the job. What's your early report card on Giovanni Van Bronckhorst?
I think it was all about results, Paul, and even more so given how well Steven Gerrard has started in England. If Van Bronckhorst had come in and bombed, then the comparisons would have been made. This guy's not in Steven Gerrard's class, but he's won every game. They're looking good. He's got one or two problems to sort out. Nathan Patterson is an ongoing problem at Rangers. He plays tonight. Good to see the youngster getting a game tonight. But that's a problem that Rangers... I don't know how they solve that problem without either selling Patterson or Tavernier. I don't see Patterson playing one forward ahead of Tavernier. That's been suggested. It's a nice problem to have, but it's still a problem. Connor Goldson's the other problem. Not playing well at all. Hasn't signed the contract. It's another one that Van Bronckhorst has to deal with.
Thanks, Leanne. She's just closing the door there. James excited in the background. All the calls coming in. 0808 17 700. You want your say tonight. Some of the Celtic fans heading to Parkhead early for the game. What was it like on the way in? It's kind of cold, but not too bad. Davey, was this the kind of night you liked to play in? Or?
Loved it. I love the lights, just under the lights.
Yeah.
There's something special about European nights under the floodlights. I don't know what it is.
Even December?
Yeah, just loved it. The floodlights just add something.
Leanne?
Yeah, I think as a player, once you get out, I mean, it's cold going to games as a fan and standing watching it. Maybe when you walk out in the pitch for the first couple of minutes in the tracksuit to get a feel for it. But once you get into the warm up and you get going, I think these are sometimes the best nights. A lot of my best memories in games in football come when it's just that cold. Maybe not too much rain tonight. I don't think it looks too drizzly out there, but certainly when it's cold and crisp and the grass is slick, you can get a good game of football going for sure.
She's in good form, despite the fact I threw it at her saying football management's precarious. And I thought, well, she's an assistant boss now as well, Davey, but it's in the blood, isn't it?
So it's such. I mean, I admire Leanne and everyone else who's prepared to go into the dugout every weekend. So much pressure now to get results. In an era where I wouldn't want to put my neck in the line for a dressing room full of footballers.
It must be tough, yeah. Can you imagine? Well, Leanne, everyone's got such an opinion, and that's a good thing.
I think it's getting tougher now, though. I think players are changing in the way that maybe even players go about their business at times. It's often easy to blame the manager and blame the tactics.
How have they changed?
Blame the supporters.
Are they more snowflake now?
I don't know if that's how I would describe it. I think that there's certainly a lot more information out there that I think players can tap into, and at times for me there's maybe too many stats, there's too many bits of information, there's too much feedback that you see on social media from certain, as we know with Hibs, there's certain aspects of the support.
Are your players on social media? They're
not too active, Davey, but I know if there's bits and pieces there, if there's podcasts kicking about that are speaking about the women's game, players hear it, it's posted online, there's maybe wee snippets, players obviously communicate at other clubs and they speak about that.
That's been affecting. I mean, the criticism affects everyone.
It is, but then you know what football's like as well. I think we can overcomplicate it, and at the point that we start to overcomplicate it is probably where we lose our identity, and maybe Hibs have got a wee bit of that just now. What is their identity? Because they've got so many good players in that squad, but what is the reason that they haven't been delivering, in their domestic league campaign? It's been very, very poor. The run of results hasn't been good enough. Certainly with the money that's been spent and the budget that's there, and the players that, Martin Boyle, we speak about him every week. Kevin Nisbet, good attacking players. Defensively, Ryan Porteous, going to be a future Scotland player. There's certainly good players within the ranks, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't been working.
You looked at the stats, Davey. They've been horrendous in the league for Hibs.
Well, I know, Paul, but we're talking 9 games. They won one of their last 9 games, which is a very, very poor run. But the bigger picture, and there's no mitigation in terms of what Jack Ross did for the club last season. Come in, finish third, finish above Aberdeen, League Cup final, Scottish Cup semi-final, beat Rangers to get to the League Cup final again this year. Yeah, they've had a bad run, but I mean, talk about knee-jerk.
I think when you look at how patient Aberdeen have been, with Stephen Glass and the run of results that they had, and they stood by their manager, and they eventually seem to now have turned a corner, and there's a bit about them with the transfer window not too far away. You would expect them to go and strengthen again. But
the other thing, the other comparison with Aberdeen, Leanne, Dave Cormack came in, he sacked a terrific manager in Derek McInnes. He's brought in Stephen Glass, spent a fortune, and Aberdeen are lying 6. Derek McInnes was never out the top 4. You only sack a manager if you know you can get someone better.
Yeah.
And I think Hibs will do very well to get someone better than Jack Ross.
And does that mean, David, do you think that Ron Gordon then has somebody in mind? Because I
He
wonder
must
if he
have,
has.
Paul.
He must,
He
exactly.
must have.
Yeah.
Listen, he's not daft.
Do you think Derek McInnes could be considered for it, Davy?
I'll tell you what, they could do a lot worse. And you threw a name at me before we come on here, Jim Goodwin. That's another one.
Yeah, I think Jim would be excellent. I think he would be a really good fit for the job and the type of player that's there. Whether that's something that he would consider at this stage of the season or it's something that Hibs would be looking at. But for me, I think he's a top manager as well.
He's bound to consider it. I mean, the bottom line, Hibs are a bigger club than St Mirren, undoubtedly. And I think Jim Goodwin, if he was offered, I think he would take in a minute.
And half his players went to Hibs, and it could have been even more, couldn't it? I suppose that is one of the things.
I think the last transfer window, it was right up until the very last minute that a couple of the players, they didn't manage to get that deal pushed through. Some players were going in one direction, some were coming in the other, and it never happened. So I think if Jim went there, there'd be some players there certainly that he would be familiar with, having had them at St Mirren previously. But also I think there's a young group there as well at Hibs, and I think that's something that Jim's used to working with as well, and getting the best out of them.
Good win last night though for Livy to get that, and they needed that as well, didn't they, Leanne? Because we were with Marvin this time last week, and they've had a really tough season.
They have, but when you look at some of the results that they've picked up, going to Celtic Park, getting their point there, they've taken the points last night, which probably against all odds off the back of Hibs and the form that and certainly the cup run coming round, you would have expected it to be a much tougher night. But I think what Livingston have got, and I speak about that identity, I think what you see is what you get with Livingston, and when they put all that together on the day, it comes together nicely and they do get results from it. It's perhaps just a bit of consistency that lets them down, and they get away from that. But no, I credit to them. We spoke to Marvin last week. I think he's really thorough about what he does. I think David Martindale has found something that ticks at Livingston. He's a right character. You can only imagine what being in that dressing room's like and being in amongst that group of players. And when you do get results, I think against all odds, when you're I don't think Livy would have been the favourites last night. Certainly a feel good factor about the club.
They've taken 5 points out of 6 from Celtic.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
I mean,
incredible.
if Celtic just lose out in the title, David Martindale should get a medal from Rangers. They should send him a medal. Just 5 points out of 6.
He quite like
from
it.
Celtic.
Yeah, I know. Great
And he's
point.
a big Rangers fan as well, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, we're 15 minutes into the programme, Davey, and you haven't mentioned yet the fact that Kyogo was dropped for the Livingston game, and then when he came on, it was not too late, but Gigamakis taking the penalty. But that was the end of October, can you believe? And that was the only blip in Celtic's run at that point. It's going to be fascinating this season, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who is the longest serving manager now in the Premiership? We're just thinking about it. When you think about all the changes, so Steven Gerrard is gone, and it was him. I wonder, who do you think it is? I think I know.
Yeah,
But
we don't.
only because of Steven Gerrard left the other week.
James McPake
It is,
isn't
isn't it?
Yeah.
And you would think, well, he's not been there that long, and he
In there
hasn't.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
hasn't
He's the longest serving
He
manager.
He must have been there a fair
Yeah.
bit of time now. He must have been. He's
Don't push me.
maybe third,
That's
maybe
all right
third
for
season
Rob.
or something. Yeah, no.
It's not Rob tonight with all the facts and figures. Come on, you know that. But Callum Davidson, I was talking to
Yeah.
you about that, but no, that was only at the start of last season.
Feels
wasn't
like
it?
he's been there a lot
it
longer.
does. He's one of the favourites. Just looking here, they're saying Steve Keane, who's the academy director at Hibs. He is. He's maybe going to front it up. We'll see. David Gray's in charge for this weekend. Who else are they saying? Obviously, Derek McInnes. Neil Lennon's name's been mentioned. Don't see that happening. Paul Lambert, there's another name that has been mentioned. There's the Norwich connection as well.
Yeah,
there. Paul Lambert, who's played and managed at the highest level. Ex-Aston Villa manager. So what do you think? 08 17 17 700. But tonight's that bit different, isn't it, in that neither team need to win, although I heard them talking last night and with Barry saying, well, if you play for Rangers or Celtic, you always have to win. There's pressure tonight. Rangers line up McLaughlin, Patterson, who's in, Goldson, Bassey, Barisic, Kamara, Lundstrom, Hadji, Wright, Kent and Roof. On the bench, McGregor, McCrory, Tavernier, Arfield, Aribo, Bakuna, Davis and Kelly. Up against Leon, who the coach, of course, Peter Bowes, and he's a sort of mentor, isn't he, of GVB. He was the captain when Giovanni joined Feyenoord, and he was also there just before he became manager. So they're lining up with Pollersbeck in goal. They've got a back four of Vogel, Da Silva, Lukeba and Henrik. Two holding in the middle, Kakere and Keita. Then three up front, Cherki, Shaqiri and Ekambi. Just behind, Moussa Dembele. He is an exciting player, isn't he, Leanne? We remember him from his time at Celtic. Special player. We thought he might have gone even further. I know he was on loan to Atletico last year.
No, he was a top talent, and I think these players, you at times need to just be thankful that they played their part in Scottish football and that we got to see them for the time that we did, because he's still a young player and I think he can go on again and achieve some brilliant things. But when you rhyme off that team, Paul, what a team, what a real talented group that is. But it's another test for Rangers, and speaking about maybe not having to win the game, I think you're only probably one game away from going on a bad run, and quite quickly that poor result becomes a statistic onto the next game and it starts to pile up, and the pressure comes with that. So I think Rangers, albeit they've made some changes tonight and Celtic as well, they'll be looking to try and get at least top performances out of their group.
I think it shows you just how strong Steven Gerrard's squad is when you look at the changes he's made tonight, and yet it's still a very decent side he's got out. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm fascinated to see what Rangers do in this window. How many go out and how many come in.
I think that's the difference for Van Bronckhorst, isn't it, Davy, that he's got to probably just maybe one or two. I think that's the difference between Rangers and Celtic just now. I do think it's important that Celtic bring in some players because they don't have that same strength in rotation as Rangers. But it's an interesting time because I said it last week, there's so many games, it's such a vital period in the season.
But it's interesting, you hear fans saying, almost disparaging now about Steven Gerrard, but Davey, as you're saying, Steven Gerrard has left this legacy. It's a strong squad. Douglas Park and the board backed him. You couldn't have seen a squad like that under almost any other manager. That's a club with a manager that was really respected, wasn't it?
But I've said previously, Paul, that Steven Gerrard got out at exactly the right time. He flagged up the lack of spending, although the Rangers board could argue they backed him to the hilt to stop the 10 in a row. He did that. But Gerrard clearly felt they needed more quality. He said it publicly. Now, what has Van Bronckhorst been promised here? The Rangers go to Holland to speak to Van Bronckhorst. Van Bronckhorst is holding all the cards. So he must have been promised a certain amount of money or a certain type of player in terms of quality that he'd be allowed to bring into the football club. Now, where Rangers get that money, are the directors going to dig again into their pocket, or are they going to finance it through selling players? That's going to be the interesting thing about the transfer window.
And Leanne, it might be a mix of both. I think deep down they would want to sell one or two in January. Do you not think a club has to? You've got to get a bit of turnover. You don't want to keep the same squad all the time.
No, we've spoke about it though, and I think Rangers are in a really strong position just now. They are top of the table. I think when you look at the carrot that's dangled for the end of the season, the Champions League qualification and the financial windfall that will come from that, you would want to keep your best players together, of course you would, and add to it. But I think what's realistic is that Rangers have got some players now that have proven that they are good players. I think there'll be clubs monitoring that. I would be more surprised if clubs didn't come chapping in the January window for a couple of Rangers players, and at that point they maybe find themselves in a strong position that they have the choice now to sell players, whereas maybe in years gone by Rangers wouldn't have had that choice. Neither side of the Old Firm would have had that choice. So
if you're going to sell, Leanne, who do you, you're obviously going to, I think Rangers have to sell. The trick for Rangers is selling without weakening the team, and the obvious one to sell without weakening the team is Nathan Patterson, because you've got a top class player in Tavernier there already, and that for me is an interesting one. I don't think Everton would be the only club interested in Nathan Patterson. I think there's so much mileage left in the boy. He's only going to get better. I think he's another Kieran Tierney in the making, and I think Rangers could get top dollar, and I think they would find it very hard to resist a good offer.
But then if you did manage to get him in the team, Davey, how much more money could you make in say 18 months time? If you do get Patterson in the team, how much would you get for him in January? So financially, would it make sense to sell him just now when he probably is still unproven at certain levels? Internationally we know how good he's been, but he hasn't had that run of 30 games in the league. You would need to get the right deal.
You need to get so much built into the contract, add-ons, and
I think we spoke about Kamara as well. If you look at Ryan Jack possibly getting back in the frame, when you look at the financial money, what you paid for Kamara and what you could possibly get for him in a transfer window, it might be something that would be a no-brainer if a decent offer came in.
We'll try and sort it out during the break.
The Go Radio Football Show with the Taxi Centre. Save on your new taxi with exclusive discounts across Skoda, Toyota, Ford, Seat and more.
Let's go.
Thanks, Chris, for the traffic and travel. It's terrible out there on the M8. If you're heading in towards town, it'll be getting busy for the game. Rangers are kicking off in about 15-20 minutes. It's Rangers playing in Lyon. We gave you the team news at the start of the programme. Let's hear from the manager, looking forward to the match in France.
It's of course, as you said, no matter what, we still be second in the group. But I think this game is for us, a good game against a good opponent. So we can have one more game against an excellent side who are first in the group. It's for me, it's every game we want to reach our level. Also, this game, it's good for me to see where the players stand and where we stand as a team. I think the experience we're having in this tournament is very good for our development.
Celtic in action at 8 tonight at home. I wonder what the crowd will be tonight, David. You reckon still around 45, 50,000?
I would think so. I mean, the European nights tend to bring them out, Paul. It's different from the bread and butter of domestic football. I think it's still got that attraction.
Ange Postecoglou was talking yesterday about the injuries. What's the situation?
Stephen Walsh is fine. He's okay, so he's available. Tony Ralston, probably not for tomorrow night. James Forrester came off on the weekend. Nothing serious, but again, we won't risk him tomorrow night. I think that's it in terms of guys the ones who sort of have had the short-term stuff.
And Leanne, a chance for some of the players that maybe we haven't seen this season to start tonight, or certainly come on at some point.
Yeah, it's certainly an opportunity, and I'm sure Ange Postecoglou look to do that, get minutes in the legs and up to speed. Certainly the way that he's looking for his players to perform and the amount of energy that's required. I think some will get a much needed rest and look to recuperate them ahead of other games that are coming up. But certainly I don't think Celtic will want to get away too much from the way they have been performing, because they've been a really good place.
What would you do with Kyogo tonight? Would he start? Would he be on the bench, or would you rest him?
Well, it'd be an interesting one, and me and Davey spoke briefly about it off air before we come on. He was worried about the burnout earlier in the season about Kyogo, so whether that's taken into consideration or not, I think he's so important for Celtic. So it is a game that you probably don't need to risk him. And when the injuries, when you look at Jota, James Forrest is going off, Ralston I think's been exceptional this season. If you lose Kyogo in amongst that as well, it could be trouble.
David, you said a couple of weeks ago they're one injury away from real trouble. If something happens to him, Giakoumakis still not fit for tonight.
Yeah, and Giakoumakis maybe not good enough.
Maybe.
Kyogo is the key to Celtic's season for me. I don't see how he can play him tonight. For two reasons. The game is more or less a dead rubber.
Yep.
Why would you take the chance of him getting injured? And secondly, he's already talked about burnout. How can he talk about burnout and then play the boy in a game that doesn't really matter tonight? Kyogo's too important, I think, to play tonight. That might sound daft, because punters want to see their team winning, and he is arguably Celtic's most productive player. But they're going to have to look after and manage this boy. If Celtic are to win the league, they have to keep him fit.
The silverware 2 miles from here at Hampden, and it's there for Celtic or Hibs in 10 days' time. Could you imagine if you lost Kyogo between now and then, Leanne?
It would be a disaster.
Yep.
But as Davey says, it could be, it could determine their season. That's how important he is. And don't get me wrong, he's probably not scored the same level of goals in the last couple of weeks that I would maybe have expected the way he started the season, but he's so pivotal to the way Celtic play. Everything that works middle to front is about him and his movements and the opportunities that he creates for other players. Callum McGregor's another one. If you lose Callum McGregor out of that Celtic team, he's the heartbeat of that team at times. Probably most of the time, actually.
Davey, arguably player of the season so far.
Callum McGregor. Oh yeah, undoubtedly. Yeah, he's just grown into the captaincy. I had my reservations that I didn't see him as a Celtic captain. But my goodness, he's proved me wrong. He's a natural leader now, and I think he's the one that the rest of them look to now for leadership in that dressing room.
Little bits about that, Davey, I watch when I'm out at the games, and I've covered a number of games at Celtic Park this season. I watch the warm-up, every bit of detail. I'm always trying to pick up the way teams prepare, how they look, the body language. Callum McGregor, even in the warm-up, he's instrumental. Everything that happens, he's a motivator in the warm-up. You see him speaking to players, high-fiving players, almost rallies the team as they go. As Davey said, he's stepped up to the challenge, I think, this season, and he's been a top performer for both club and country.
We're going to turn to the Rangers game shortly, 15 minutes away. Olympic Lyonnais against Rangers. But what about Kyogo then, as we see Kenny Miller there in Sky? I see Derek McInnes is there with Ali McCoist. Is he going to be, not Ali, but Derek, could he be the new Hibs manager? If you were Ron Gordon, who's your appointment tonight?
Derek McInnes. Yeah. Jim Goodwin is another good shout. So many, but you wouldn't go wrong with Derek McInnes.
What about you, Leanne?
Jim Goodwin. For me, I would love to see him get that job. I think, as Davey mentioned, Hibs are certainly a bigger club than St Mirren. I would like to see Jim get the opportunity to maybe buy a more expensive player and have more resources at his disposal. But what he's achieved at St Mirren and the way he's got his team playing, albeit they've maybe not been in the best run in recent weeks, I think it would be a brilliant opportunity for him.
Well, we'll bring you the news as soon as we hear it. You have to think they've got somebody standing by for this, because you're right, 10 days away from a cup final. They're 19 points. It's not where they wanted to be. You know, they were third and fourth just a couple of months ago, but you know, nobody's that far ahead of them. They could be back.
They must know who he's going to bring in, Paul. I mean, they couldn't possibly go into the cup final with a caretaker manager. So Ron Gordon is bright enough to know that, I think, and I think that appointment will be made very quickly. Check it,
Slater's, or whoever it is in Edinburgh. Who's making the jacket? That used to be the sign. The Rangers jackets were made there, and the Celtic ones, they get the initial on it and all the rest of it. Right, one more on Kyogo and all the stuff about does he dive or whatever, and there's been so much. The guys talked about it last night. I just wanted to get your take on it. This is the manager saying, hey, if you don't like Kyogo playing football, you don't like football.
All these brave people, these warriors who, you know, accusing people who are out there. Kyogo's the size of a jockey. He's playing against guys almost foot taller than him, and all these brave warriors on the outside are casting aspersions, are they? I haven't read it. I won't read it. You end up in arguments with ignorant people. You eventually become one of them. So I kind of ignore those kind of narrative as you painted it. I think Kyogo's been great for our football club. I think he's been great for Scottish football. I'd be surprised if anyone wouldn't want somebody of his character and his playing ability in their club or in their league.
Davey, are they making too much about Kyogo going down or whatever? What's your take on it?
Well, first of all, you know I'm a fan, but I think there have been occasions where he has gone down easily. I think Martin Boyle is another player who has a similar reputation. And the problem for players, Paul, when they get a reputation, give a dog a bad name. And referees are not going to give him the benefit of the doubt if he goes down too easily. I think the one was at Obalai of Livingston. I think he could have stayed on his feet. So, you know, I think now it's been highlighted. I think he'd be reluctant to try and buy anything off referees. But listen, show me a striker who's not trying to buy something off a referee.
Yep. Leanne, strikers would take the milk out your tea, wouldn't they?
Aye, they would. Some of them could probably buy and sell you as well. Listen, don't get me wrong, Kyogo's a top talent. You know, like Davey, I've loved watching him this season. I think he's been a brilliant addition to the Scottish League, but I would need to agree there has been moments that he has gone down too easily, and I think especially when you're a new player and you come to the league, there's probably more of a microscope on him and looking at his performance and his behaviours and the way he reacts, and you don't want that to become your reputation. Not when you're as talented as he is, and that's all you would say. But listen, I spoke to Marvin last week, and the Livingston players were in for a real tough game of it up against him. He's by no means a soft player to play against. I think he gives as good as he gets, but any player that goes down too easy for me it's particularly embarrassing. I don't think there's any need.
You ever taken a dive, Leanne? You ever taken a dive in it?
I would like to not think so, Davey. No, I think there's been a couple of moments probably in my career where I've been cute in terms of winning penalties in certain areas, but I would never dive at all. It's just not in my nature at all. I think there's moments in football that you can probably draw the foul or certainly be smart in how you use your body, and that's where again defenders and midfielders need to be smart with the types of tackles that they make. But to go down at the slightest wee touch or a brush of a shoulder is certainly not for me.
Your nana would not be having it, would she? She wouldn't be having it.
Honestly, that's one thing she goes on about. She actually, it drives her mad. I think that's actually why a lot of people like watching women's football as well, Paul and Davey. And I'm not just saying that, but I genuinely believe the women's game is far more honest at times than the men's game. Challenges in the women's game, players are straight back up again. Not interested. They don't even consider rolling about. I watched a funny clip I think BBC had put up yesterday. It was an Irvine Meadow game, and the players were synchronised. It was actually a foul, but the players rolled and rolled again and rolled again, and they were very synchronised in doing so. You certainly don't see that in the women's game.
Let's go on the lines here on Go Radio, the football show with the Taxi Centre. Taylor's on the line. Hi Taylor, good evening.
Hiya, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you feeling about Rangers tonight?
Positive. I can't say I'm looking forward to a win or expecting a win, but I think he's gave a lot of fringe players an opportunity to impress and rested our key players for Sunday.
Who are you looking to impress then of the six who've come in?
Patterson, Lundstrom. I'm really looking forward to, because I think he's been harshly done by. Not through any fault of his own sort of thing. Because I think he was really starting to come onto a game before Gerrard left, and when Gio came in, he obviously had his own system. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play. Wright, I think, looked sharp when he came on against Dundee. So I'm looking forward to seeing him getting more minutes.
Leanne, what about Lundstram? It's a good point he makes.
Yeah, I'm probably not completely sold on him just yet. I think at times he looks to me like a player that he's got so much athleticism about him, but I think at times he looks like he would much rather just get up and down the pitch and sometimes not influence the game with the ball. But I would agree with Taylor. I think there was moments that he came onto a game under Steven Gerrard and he's found himself on the bench now and had very limited opportunities. So it'll be maybe a game that will suit him. I think it'll be more intense than probably domestic games, and he might need to go and open up those legs in the middle of the park and cover a fair amount of distance tonight and do that defensive side of the game. But you would like to see him getting box to box as well if he possibly could. But certainly it's an opportunity.
Davey?
I think Taylor's spot on. I think Lundstram was playing the best football of his Rangers career up until recently, and I'm surprised he's out of the side. And I'll tell you what, we're talking about the transfer window. Rangers would get good money for John Lundstram in England. He has still got a very good reputation in England. They would get good money for him.
You think he could be back
I know
down
they got,
the road?
well, they got him on a free, Paul.
Yeah.
They got him on a free, so every penny's a profit, and he might be one that Rangers are well off for midfield players. He might be one that could get Rangers decent money.
Taylor, how would you feel about that if Lundstram was away back down the road in January?
Not a chance. I think Kamara's the one that is more likely to go.
And he may well be, but yeah, they could make some money there. But it'd be interesting, the Rangers fans, because some of them really like Lundstram, others feel they haven't seen enough. What about Scott Wright, Davey? What do you feel about the guy who came just over a year ago from Aberdeen?
Yeah, I just don't see how he gets into the team. With the likes of Kent and Hadji, maybe even Aribo as opposition. The inventive player, the guy who can unlock the door. I think you could argue he's not had enough chances he's not had enough game time to prove himself. Anytime he has played, he's done well, but it's hard for him to get in that team when there are other similar types of player.
I just wonder if he's now one of these players that's far more effective coming off the bench. I think the games that I've watched, start games, I don't think he has the same influence. I don't think he keeps up that level of performance over the 90 minutes. I think he's really effective when he comes on, gives you that spark. He's a direct player, very technical, can create opportunities, but it's an opportunity again tonight for him, to go and grab it with both hands. And especially with the transfer window, could you possibly lose a Ryan Kent and other players in those types of areas? A Rebo, I think, will be a bit of interest around him as well. So Scott Wright's got to try and grab this opportunity, as I say, with both hands.
See, there's no Ryan Jack tonight. Are you leaving him behind to do more training or whatever? He came back in.
It's a worry, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's an interesting one because you would have probably liked to have seen him in the squad tonight, and minutes is absolutely, so important, and tonight would have been that chance again. But you just wonder if, it's one of these injuries that's still niggling away. When you look at Celtic as well with James Forrest, another wee niggle off the back of a long-term injury. These things can happen and it's tough to get back up to speed.
Taylor, we're just looking at the teams that you could meet. Barcelona, Borussia Dortmund, Porto, who you beat recently, RB Leipzig, Sheriff Tiraspol, Seville, serial winners of the tournament, Zenit St Petersburg, you remember them from 2008, the cup final, and Villarreal or Atalanta. Some great ties coming up. In fact, Barca, I see they lost again at the weekend to Real Betis. Last night too, they lost 3-0. Who would you fancy from all of them, Taylor?
Barca.
I answered it for you. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Sure,
under new management, but that would
Broncos would enjoy that one.
Indeed, his old club. And scoreline tonight, Taylor?
Positive, I would say one each, but I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 one of them.
You think so? Dembele, you think he'll score?
Sorry, what did you say?
He doesn't. Dembele, you think he'll score?
Don't care.
Don't care. Taylor, thanks for calling the Go Radio Football Show.
Thank you.
Cheers.
The Go Radio Football Show with the Taxi Centre. Save on your new taxi with exclusive discounts across Skoda, Toyota, Ford, Seat and more.
Let's go. As we kick off in Leon against Rangers, Leanne Crichton, what's your prediction tonight?
I think it'll still be a tough night for Rangers. That Leon side, as I mentioned earlier, they're littered with talent. I think Dembele up top will certainly have something to prove. I'm sure this is one of these games that he will be looking forward to. But I fancy Rangers to give a good account of themselves. Maybe a 2-1 Leon, or even a close, 1-0.
Leon haven't been doing so well in the league, but they've been terrific in Europe. Davey, what do you reckon tonight?
I think it depends how much Leon want it tonight. If Leon are at their best, they'll beat Rangers because they're a better side. And I think Stephen Gerrard admitted as much, didn't he? He said they were a Champions League side. If they're up on top of their game tonight, they'll win the game.
And GVB will look out for him as a manager in Europe. Stephen Gerrard undoubtedly knew how to play in Europe. He had a great record with Rangers even before they got things going in at home.
Yeah, and that was probably the only time that you really kind of seen Rangers maybe change the way that they approach certain games and went for more a counter-attacking style of play a lot of times, and it certainly paid off for them. But Van Bronckhorst will be looking to match that and certainly go one better. And you might just see a more defensive Rangers tonight, trying to implement a lot of the stuff that he's been doing even within the games that they dominate possession. So no, I'm interested to watch it, Paul, certainly.
You've got the team, well, give the team lineups right at the start. Leanne, how are Rangers lining up now that you see them actually in the first 2 minutes? It's Leon No on the attack. See Moussa Dembele is their captain tonight. But for Rangers, how are they actually lining up?
Yeah, no, it's actually... the one surprise is that Kent does look as if he is on the left hand side and Wright is on the right hand side of that front three. But McLaughlin in goals, Barisic, Bassey, Goldson and Patterson. The midfield three, Lundstrom, Kamara and Hadji is dropped in there, and the front three is Wright, Roof and Kent.
Tough one for the Rangers fans, wasn't it, Davey? The game was on for them.
Crazy.
They made it and then they're told no, and then they're told 36 hours before you can come.
But some flights have been cancelled by that time, so punters have lost a good bit of money. Just through poor communication.
We had Scott on the phone in here on the Go Radio Football Show a couple of nights ago, and he's lost £300-400. That's a lot of money.
I know, and that shouldn't be allowed to happen. The communication, especially for a club competition like that, Europa League, surely the clubs have got to do better. If you want fans to continue to travel and you want them to keep investing in the competition and backing their teams, you can't mess them about. Similarly with the domestic side of the game, you can't mess the supporters about. That's what that's what it's about. That's what the players want to play for, is the fans. So no, it was strange. It was just an absolute shambles throughout the week. 6
changes for Rangers tonight, but Connor Golson's there consistently, no matter what happens, no matter what people think, is he going to be away next season? He hasn't committed yet to a new contract. Leanne, what's your take on that?
Yeah, and he captains the side tonight as well, so that to me is clear that there's no issues at the club. Whether there's an agreement being made that he will go, but he gives everything that he's got until then. Carry on. That's football. At times you need to accept the place that people arrive at and the decisions that they make. I don't think he's going to down tools and certainly stop performing for Rangers. I know his performance, he's maybe questioned for a couple of weeks, but he looks to be back to his old self, certainly in the last run of games.
Davey, Connor Golson.
He's looking for a last big payday, and I can understand that. Every player in his position of his age would be the same. Whether he's worth the big money that he appears to be looking for, I'm not convinced. I think he's had a poor season. He's certainly not the player he was last season, where he was one of Rangers' best performers. And it'll come down to money. I don't think it would be a huge loss, and I don't think it would be a huge surprise if he moves on.
More interesting is what's going to happen with Nathan Patterson. Davey said earlier, Leanne, could they adapt to have Tavernier and Patterson playing together? What do you feel about that?
There has been a couple of games that certainly they've both been on the pitch at the same time, whether it's a situation that could come around week by week. I don't think so. I think both of their natural positions is that right back area, and I think Davey said it, whether it was on air or not, but I think you need to make that decision. It's got to be one or the other, because I think you've got better players that can go and do that job higher up the pitch, off of both sides, than probably what Tavernier could or Patterson could. You're not getting the best out of them.
Davey?
Yeah, they've got a free kick here. Ryan Kent, who is playing noticeably wider under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. Lovely little step over to go by the right back, clearly pulled back, and Rangers have a free kick a couple of yards from the byline on the left hand side. First chance that Goldson and Bassey have had. Lundstrom's in there as well to go up and have a run at this. Hadji's over the ball, Barisic's there as well. It's all about the delivery now. Leon have everybody back. It's touch type marking here from Leon. No zonal stuff. In it comes. Leon win the first header and get it away.
That's what Rangers have, certainly in abundance. They've got height in their team.
Yeah, they have, and that's certainly moments tonight that they'll be looking to try and take advantage of that, but it certainly wasn't the best delivery, and Leon managed to deal with it. But positive signs from Ryan Kent. He's probably is a player, I think, that whether he knows the transfer window's coming round and in performances, he looks to have that spark back again. He looks like a player that's hungry. I think what you need to do with him is isolate him in wide areas. I think he's much better standing up defenders in 1v1 situations rather than coming in the pitch, and a lot of the time